Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So happy to be here. All those who have been involved with my programs earlier, you may be well aware that we were doing a live every Wednesday on LinkedIn, and it is called BSB Live. That was what we were doing for a long time, right? But then we evolved and we said, let's do something different, something that is sharper, more focused, more useful, more related to leadership. And that is why we focused on conversations that are meant for leaders today and also preparing them for the future. So, what we started just last year is now called BSB Live Podcast. So, welcome to the Live Podcast, episode 2. But before that, let me just tell you that we started this last Wednesday with Dorji Dradul from from Bhutan, and we had spoken about the leader's creative advantage. It was about creativity. And what happened really was that very often the conversation kept drifting to AI, and which brings us to today discuss if AI is stepping uh, into action, then what happens to leadership? And to explore that, we have somebody who's very powerful, very experienced, and has done a great work in it. So let's invite to uh, let's invite our main guest today onto the stage, Anand Iyer. Now, Anand Iyer is not only uh, AI by profession, also by his name, because he's Anand Iyer AI. So, Anand, welcome to the podcast today, and very, very happy to have you here.
So pleasure is mine, Brigadier, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm assuming that we have people from all over the world who are joining us. So welcome to all our guests, and happy to have this conversation.
Very good. So, Anand, from the battlefield to boardroom, I have seen one constant clarity that is under pressure that people have to take. People have to take decisions, take judgments under pressure. So, in your view, is AI going to elevate leadership or expose the gaps in it?
See, from my perspective, AI amplifies whatever people have, right? So if people are creative, AI amplifies creativity. If people are good in data analysis, AI amplifies that. If people are good in writing, AI amplifies that. If people are good in creating poetry, AI can amplify that. So AI is just a tool, and it amplifies whatever characteristics that we as leaders have, right? So from
Yeah,
that perspective,
yeah,
that is the fundamental thing about AI.
yeah. So now you have seen multiple waves of technology from the factory floor to AI. So, what is that leadership trait that people have to constantly be careful about when technology has arrived already?
So let me start with my journey in terms of where I started. So I did not start in a boardroom. Actually, I started on a shop floor. So I did my engineering in metallurgy, and I was working with multiple clients in mines. I worked with clients in rigs. I worked with clients in refineries. I worked with manufacturing clients. I worked with clients in different areas, right? I worked with big players like in tire manufacturing and so on and so forth. So one thing that I have seen is over a period of time, there were waves of technology that came in, right? So for example, I was working with HCL Technologies, where I was working on training more than 20,000 people different process areas. So in that entire process, what I saw is like first came automation. There was a wave of automation where everyone was telling that these automations are going to eliminate all the work that we are doing. After that came cloud. After that came digital. When I say digital, there were multiple technologies like Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, and so many different things came in. Now, and then finally now we have AI. Now the challenge with AI compared to all the other technologies, AI is much more accessible to everyone, right? So suddenly what has happened is cloud and digital and all these technologies needed some kind of technical knowledge for people. But with AI, that is not the case. What has happened is uh, it has made it so accessible to everyone that everyone thinks they know AI. But again, that's a big challenge, right? So the challenge that I've seen is people who have been constantly upgrading themselves, constantly reinventing themselves, they were never affected. In fact, they have thrived with each technology that has come in. Like for example, people who were able to leverage automation, they were able to automate all the mundane tasks that people were doing. Similarly, when it came to cloud, it has, again, if there are technical problems with an application, when you put it on the cloud, it's not going to disappear. In fact, it is going to get amplified, meaning if there are what we call as technical debts in application, these technical debts will become more in a cloud, because cloud is more of like it, when it can work faster, it has better storage capability, it has better reach and all those things, right? So same thing is happening with AI as well. So if people don't have the capability, if they don't focus on their own learnings, if they don't reinvent constantly themselves, that is where the challenge happens. So it is never about the technology, and it is not just something now, right? For example, in 1500 century, when in the 15th century, when the printing press was first invented, people were protesting because at that time people used to write with hand. So those writers suddenly became so conscious that, and they were able to maximum write one or two three pages in a day, because they used to write in a very calligraphic way. But when the printing press came, suddenly they got threatened. But over a period of time, now we have seen that the printing press has become an integral part of our life. All the books, textbooks, everything that we are using. Similarly, when the automotive came, right, automobile industry, when Henry Ford launched the T model first time, there was a lot of protests. People who were driving horses, they were telling that we will become unemployed. But you will be very surprised that it was a positive outcome, because what used to happen is the street used to get dirty with all the horse shit on the road and all those things. Now we have got a cleaner vehicle which can go faster, which was actually cheaper, and all those things, right? So every time
So
something
I also
new.
remember in
Yeah.
I remember in India, Naya Daur, where the Tanga drivers went on a strike, protest when the bus came. We also had a race between the Tongas and the bus. I remember.
Correct. So that is how it has evolved. So, but one thing that you saw is that never ever it has happened that people have become redundant, right? So every time they have reinvented themselves, they have started using that technology. Some, for some people it would have taken more time, but finally everyone has got adjusted. So today no one protests about printing press or car or anything, right? In fact, now that has become an integral part of life. And similarly, AI also is going to do the same.
But do people are do they do protest for AI also now when they talk about uh, cooling of data centers and how it is against environment?
Correct. Yes, these are what we call as responsible AI. So obviously, like any tool, like for example, if you take a knife can be used for cooking amazing meal. You can use a knife for saving lives of people, literally, meaning when a surgeon uses a knife, he can save a person. But it can also be used for killing people. So AI is similar to that, right? So it has its positive, it has its negative. Now, how responsibly people use it, should I use it in all scenarios, should I use it in certain scenarios, today there is no clarity, right? So today, the brigadier, the challenge is not about AI. The challenge is in terms of, there is no clarity in terms of how AI has to be integrated in the work or integrated in the business, right? So people are still experimenting, they are trying different things, but they have still not been able to figure out whatever has to be done in terms of leveraging the power of AI.
I absolutely
I
agree with you.
absolutely
This
agree
is
with you.
clarity
This
which
is
is the most
clarity which is
important.
the most important.
And while we are
And
talking about
while we
clarity,
are talking about
before we get
clarity,
deeper into
we get
that,
deeper into that.
I also want to ask
I also
you
want to
this
ask you
common
this
fear that people
common
have,
fear that people
that
have,
will AI
that will
replace us?
AI
What do you say
replace
to
us?
that?
What do you say to that?
So first and foremost, we have to always understand that it is the human intelligence that drives artificial intelligence. So it is, in fact, the human beings, they have created the artificial intelligence. It will never replace human beings. But what it will replace is, it will replace the mundane task, repetitive work that was done by analysts, which used to take months. Now it can be done in a matter of hours, right? So there are certain tasks that will get definitely replaced, but it is, and again, people who don't want to change, right? They say that मेरे को तो यही करना है, I will do whatever I am currently doing. They are the people who will definitely get impacted. But people who are willing to learn, reinvent themselves, and today what is also going to happen is, probably it's also going to, like for example, today it is said that, yeah, so it is said that today there is a, whatever careers that we have today, by 2030 almost 50 to 60% of that career itself will be gone, and there will be completely new roles that is likely to come up. So today, like parents who are thinking that I'll make my son an engineer or a doctor, it's not that these professions are going to vanish, but it will be completely reinvented. For example, you'll have more and more instances of robotic surgery in different areas. Today, it is used in a limited way, but it is going to become better. Doctors are also going to leverage AI for diagnosis, though they will have to use their human intelligence to find that. But what happens is today, for example, I'll give a simple example, right? So I generally do this annual medical checkup, and there are some 60, 70 different parameters where certain parameters are within that boundary or range, certain parameters are here and there. And for example, if I put that in ChatGPT, I will probably get a heart attack just looking at the output of the chat GPT. It will say that, hey, you have this thing, that thing, because it will go and look at each individual item in the list of 60, 70 tests. But a doctor will never do that, right? He will look at it in a very holistic way, a very diagnostic way. And then based on that, they are going to do the analysis, right? So that is how professions are going to get evolved. So whatever current professions we are having, some of them will get replaced. There are certain industries, like for example, the business process outsourcing industry, most likely is going to get replaced. The reason is, one, it has always been inhuman, right? People working in night shifts, and if you look at it, yes, people are getting well paid, but look at on the negative side, people are not in the circadian rhythm, that they are not able to follow that. Their healths are getting impacted. You are seeing youths in 20s and 30s having diabetes, cardiac problems, hypertension, because obviously that's a basic thing, right? God has made us in a way that we rise with the sun and set with the sun. But unfortunately, we are doing exactly the other way around, right? We rise with the sunset and sleep when the sun rises, which is exactly going against the nature. So these are certain things that are, there are industries which are going to get evolved, and there are roles which will get evolved. But AI is never going to replace human beings. It is going to have a different aspect of a new role, a new job, new industries will get created. So that is what, how I look at it, right? So people don't have to fear that will I get replaced. What question they have to ask is, how do I reinvent myself so that I can leverage the full power of AI?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Now, before we go
Now,
further
before
and
we go
continue
further,
the conversation, I do
session,
believe that
I
my
do
voice
believe that
is
my
helping.
voice
That is
is
the feedback we
helping.
are
That's the
getting.
feedback we are.
That is, I've tried my best to
I've
do something.
tried my best to do
Technology is
something.
not helping
It's
me.
not helping me.
So I will talk
So
less.
I
That's
will
all.
talk less.
I
That's all.
talk less and let
Talk
Anand
less
speak
and let
more.
Anand speak
That
more.
is the way we are going to go
That is the
forward.
way we are going to go forward.
And I also want
I
all of
also
you
want
who are
all of
listening
you
to us,
listening to
please
us,
keep writing some
please keep
comments,
writing
because
some
that is the way
comments,
we
because
know that
the
you are
way
there.
we know that
And
there
all the questions
and
that you
all
have, please keep them coming. because we will answer the questions towards the end of the session, right? So let's go to the next one, Anand, and let me ask you, uh, what do you feel that we should do further to continue with AI becoming more, or how do leaders become more relevant to their existence rather than be worried about whether AI will replace us or not?
So first and foremost, what has happened is whenever we say leadership, unfortunately today, if you look at it, right, most of the jobs that a leader is doing is not actually leadership. They are actually doing what we call as management. So they are managing dashboards, they are managing reports, they are creating, they are having, or they are spending a lot of time in meetings. They are spending, for example, I know at least in some of the roles that I was playing, that 60 to 70% of a leader's time is spent in only meetings, and that becomes more and more as they go higher up in the cadre, right? So ideally a leader should be thinking more in terms of the new strategies, new markets, new products, new services, how they can improve their existing business. So what has happened is AI has actually brought those things out. Now leaders cannot, because now a dashboard can be created in a matter of minutes. Leaders can easily track things with the help of AI. They can automate a lot of things. So, from all this perspective, my thought process is that AI is actually bringing out the real leadership out, right? Because now leaders can really start thinking that how do they reinvent their industry? How do they reinvent their company? What are the new roles that will be there in the future? What are the new kind of skills that they need to develop in their teams? So this is the real leadership, right? Because real leadership has always been more about strategy and execution rather than looking at the operational aspect, which unfortunately most of the leaders were doing for the last so many years. Because that is my personal observation. I've seen so many of the leaders, they will spend a lot of time on these things, which ideally is not the, yes, definitely you need reviews, you need to see where the company is going, but if you are spending 60 to 70% of time on all these activities, that's not a healthy ratio. My thought process, it should be the other way around, where you spend 70 to 80% of things on the strategic things, talking to your customers, understanding their pain point, seeing how you can improve your processes, see how you can add new or more value to your existing customers, rather than doing the other aspects, right? In terms of reviewing things and all those things. So if you can reverse that, if the leaders can spend 60-70% on the strategic thing and 30 to 40% on the non-strategic thing, operational things, making sure that everything is in place. So probably these are the, that is what AI is actually bringing, because now it has become so easy for a leader that if they have the right dashboards and other things, they can easily do it. So from my perspective, Brigadier, AI is actually bringing the real leadership skills out, right? And second thing, I'm sure you will be able to correlate this with a battlefield scenario. So today, there is so much of information, and sometimes when you have too much information, that also becomes very difficult. So you get into what we call as analysis paralysis, where you have so much of data, you're not able to infer. Now with AI, we are getting a lot of inferences, lot of insights, lot of stories within your data. So probably the leadership, when I say leaders, it's not only the CEO, right? All the people who are in a senior position, who are maybe the head of businesses, or who are leading a particular region, or who are particularly managing multiple clients or a single client. I would term all of them as leaders. So now they should spend more time in terms of insights, in terms of what is the data showing, where they can bring more improvement, value adds. So once that flip happens, automatically the leadership will get elevated, and obviously they have to also see how they can reinvent themselves, right? Because what I have seen is there is always a push from the top that everyone should become AI literate and all those things. I am not sure how much time the leadership is spending. So because ideally they should also spend a lot of time in understanding about these tools, how it can impact, what are the tools which are relevant for them, because there is a lot of noise. There are 2 days back, I was in an event where they were telling today there are more than 8,000 AI tools. Now, obviously, we cannot, no one in the universe can understand all these 8,000 tools. Out of this, which are the top 4 or 5 or 6 tools that is relevant for my organization, my business? And then understand one second, you become better in that, because when you are better, then you will be able to get the best output. And best part about AI tools is that it is like earlier we used to have this phase of gigo, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So if you ask the right questions to the tool, it will give you the right insights. But today the challenge is, are we asking the right questions to the AI tools? Because if you start focusing on that, automatically you'll start getting a much better insights into your business, what's happening. And even if you don't have the complete data with you, which I'm sure in a war scenario or in a army kind of scenario, you'll have a lot of those instances, right, where you don't have full information but you have to take a decision. Sometimes it's gut feel or whatever, but it's not always about gut feel. Now if you have insights about your data, about your competitors, then it becomes much more easier. So I would in fact flip this question to you, Brigadier, and ask you, have you seen these kind of scenarios in a battlefield, right, where you have limited data and you have to take a decision?
Actually, it's very powerful, Anand. What you said just now was very powerful. You said that the AI is a tool. So, in battlefield or even in the peacetime, and I'll give you an example so that my viewers who are not into the army can also understand that and correlate that you get multiple reports, you get multiple information pieces, whether they come from the reconnaissance or they come from air photographs or aerial reconnaissance, or they come from patrolling or whatever, and intelligence sources. When all that is information is coming, one, it can be contradictory. Two, it can be incomplete. It always is incomplete. And thirdly, it can be very confusing. So when all those pieces of information are coming and the time is always at premium, then it is a leader who decides what to take and what not to take, what to keep and what not to keep. And based on the leader's experience, the knowledge, and the intuition, he will then take a decision. And if the decision goes wrong, he has the capability and experience to cope up and take corrective measures immediately. Because in the army, the mistakes are very, very expensive. They don't cost you targets not met and all, they cost you casualties, they cost you lives. And if you create a war widow in one operation, she remains a war widow for the rest of her life. You can't rectify that mistake. So therefore, it is very, very important that we take care of that. Now, I was telling you that I'll tell you an incident of a peacetime location. So I was posted in Punch, which is a very a very border close town in J&K. And we had a river, not a river, actually a rivulet called Betar Nala. And that used to get flooded in the monsoons. And whenever it got flooded, there was one battalion across that which used to get totally cut off. So one fine day in the morning, I got the information that the Betar Nala is flooded before we could have pumped in the morning milk that used to go there. So therefore, the Jawans would have no milk for tea. And in that high altitude, you cannot, it's difficult for you to be comfortable. A cup of tea in the morning is your starter. And it's more valuable than what we think in peacetime. So I was confronted by my junior commissioned officer. He came and he said, I was just talking to the quartermaster of that battalion. And I said, you consume the reserve milk powder that you have. They have the milk powder for emergency, but they can't consume it till they get permission. And I was also to get permission, but I took that risk and I said, I cannot wait for the permission. That will be too late. So I said, you go ahead and consume. And my JCO standing in front of me tells me, don't do it, don't do it. I said, what happened? He says, sir, there'll be audit objection. I said, to hell with audit objection. I'll answer that. I don't want the Jawans to be without tea. Audit objections can be settled later. Now, any other leader in my position could have also taken another decision and said, to hell with the tea. Audit objection must be very strong. That means you give importance to rules and regulations, but you don't give importance to people's comfort. So these are a couple of things where I've seen on the spot a decision has to be taken. You get it on partial information. You have to judge. You have to see the situation. You have to see the morale of the troops that time. And lot of decisions
Exactly.
taken in my book Time Management, $1 million second. There's one Captain Muthuswamy who's narrated an incident of Siachen where the decision was so important and it had to be taken in split seconds. So you're very right. It is the judgment of the leader, it is the decision making capability, it's also the risk taking capability which goes along with this.
Correct.
Yeah. So
So
thank
I'll
you.
give you similar instances from the industry, right? So I worked with HCL Technologies, I worked with Cognizant, and in both these companies, I had a fortune of working with teams or center of excellence that we had created frameworks. Now these frameworks, obviously, AI cannot create. The reason is these frameworks were created based on years of our learnings and experiences, which has gone into creating this framework. But even if you have this framework in place, as you rightly told, finally it is the humans, the business unit leader or the SB, we used to call as strategic business unit or business unit leaders, they have to take that final decision in terms of how it has to be implemented, which accounts it will be implemented, and there were a lot of judgmental calls. Similarly, I'll also share certain instances, like though it is not a war kind of scenario, but let's say you are a business head and you go and meet your customer, and then there is something they are not happy about. Now in this kind of scenario, you cannot tell them that, okay, I'll go and connect with my CEO or a CFO and then do it, right? So they have to take some commitments or make some commitments then and there, again based on their gut feel. It may have a negative impact, but it will on maybe on a short term basis it can have a negative impact in terms of you're giving some additional margins to them, or you have to do something extra for them. But eventually what happens is it gets cancelled because the customers really like that kind of a opportunity, right? Because they have been able to uh, like they are happy with the outcome. So these are the situations in a business scenario where the judgment, the courage, the vision, because obviously AI cannot have a vision. Finally, it's the human beings that have a vision, which AI can maybe amplify and help it in crystallizing that vision in a much better way or articulating it in a much better way. Similarly, AI doesn't have courage. It doesn't even know the feelings as of today. Though we are talking about AGI, which is something which will come in the future, where we are telling that AI can learn about human emotions and all. But still, you will have to understand, even if AI is becoming empathetic, it cannot still feel the hurt, right? It's only a human being that can feel the hurt. So these are certain characteristics: judgment, vision, courage, making decisions with limited information or no information. So these are certain characteristics of leaders which I don't think AI can ever replace.
Absolutely, absolutely powerful.
Absolutely
I would
powerful.
like to ask the
Like
audience,
to
is the
ask the
ego still
audience if
there
the
or
ego
has it
still there
reduced?
reduced.
Anyone could comment on
Anyone
that?
could comment on that?
Okay, so in any case,
Okay.
we'll
In any
continue.
case, we'll continue.
Okay, so
Okay. So
now the next thing I want
now the
to
next
get
thing I
to
want
is
to get to is
that if
that
intelligence is
if
becoming a
intelligence is
commodity,
becoming a
that what is
commodity,
that one
what is that
human
one
capability
human
that will
capability
truly
that will truly
separate leaders going
separate
forward?
leaders going forward?
Correct. So, as everyone is aware, right? So today tools are available to everyone, whether it's company A, B, C, D. So same set of tools are available. the same set of capabilities in terms of the teams who are executing, it's also available, right? So they have AI engineers, they have data scientists, they have all. So most of the companies always have that. But in this kind of scenario, Brigadier, what I feel is the difference is in the clarity, because that is where today, like I was recently in a leadership summit for GCCs, Global Capability Center in Hyderabad. So one common thing that came across, even big companies, multinational companies, Fortune 500 companies, they are still experimenting with AI in terms of they are still running. Yes, there are certain cases there where they have moved it into production, but most of the people are still trying to figure out where AI can be used, which areas they can be used, how is it going to benefit them, what are the areas where it will be really useful, whether it's internal or external. Like for example, AI is getting used a lot of things in terms of risk and compliance, because that's a very important aspect today, right? Even any company that runs today, they have a lot of compliances, they have a lot of legalities that they have to take care. And specifically, if you are working with European clients, then you also have certain things like GDPR, and then there are some specific uh, domain related compliances, right? For example, all the healthcare and life sciences company, they need to follow something called as HIPAA. HIPAA is a very specific protocol which has to be followed by them. Similarly, if you look at banking, they have a lot of things like Basel, you have SOX, and so many compliances that they need to look at. And since if you are working in India with an Indian company, then there are RBI guidelines, SEBI guidelines. So companies cannot default on these things. A CEO cannot go and tell that I was not aware of these things, right? These are like compliance requirements. So this is where AI becomes very important. Which are the top use cases where you can use AI? And I would generally look at it from three perspectives. One is, what is the impact to business when I'm selecting a use case? So I'll look at three things: impact to business. Second is how easy or how difficult it is to impact or implement. And third aspect that I look at is what is the risk if I implement it? What is the risk if I don't implement it? Now, if you put this in a grid kind of a format, and let's say you have 10 use cases and then apply these three things, right? One, impact to business. Obviously, it has to be high. So if you take a scale of 1 to 10, it should be at least 8 and above. Second, ease of implementation, it will be the other way around, right? So if it is easy to implement, again, it will be like high, like if you take a scale of 1 to 10. And the third one is what I would say the risk factor. So it will be the other way around, because if my risk is high, if I implement a use case, then obviously I will not go with it. So in this case, it will be a scale of 10 to 1, where I will look at things which are 4 and below, because that is less risky from a business perspective. So if business leaders get that clarity and they can start using all their use cases against this particular framework, where they can identify which will be the best use case for automation, where they can use agents, where they should not use agents, which are the areas where it will be better to like increase your team, and which areas where you can reduce your team, specifically where you have repetitive tasks and all. So these kind of clarity, once leaders get, then automatically that becomes your differentiator, because tool or the capability is no longer a differentiator, but clarity is. And in fact, that is the whole premise with which I have started my own startup, which talks about AI clarity. So today, unfortunately, and forget about Fortune 500 companies, the smaller companies have even a bigger challenge. When we talk about SMB, small and medium businesses, today working professionals, if you look at them, they don't have clarity. They are always told that you go through these 10 training programs, but they go through it and then finally they find out that yes, it was very useful information, but what do I do it on my work on the next day? They don't have that clarity, right? So I would say clarity today is the biggest quality of a leader. Like the more clear a leader is in terms of how to leverage this tool, because as I told you, AI is still a tool. So that is where the difference is going to come.
That was very
That was
powerful. Actually,
very powerful.
what Anand has said is
And
gold,
that is
absolute gold
gold,
for leaders.
absolute gold for me.
As it is,
As
AI
it
or
is,
no
I
AI,
or no AI,
clarity for leaders
clarity
is the
for
most
leaders is the
important thing.
most important thing.
And particularly, we are talking about
Particularly, we are talking about
uncertainty. We are talking
uncertainty.
of the fog
We are
of
talking
war,
about the fog of war,
the layer of
the
dust that
layer
gets
of dust
erupted
that
on
gets
your mind
erupted on your mind,
makes situations very,
makes
very
situations very, very
ambiguous.
ambiguous.
And therefore, clarity is so
Therefore,
important.
clarity is so important.
But along with clarity, Anand, tell me, uh, where would you place trust? Because in leadership, trust is another very important thing. And along with not only, let's say, AI, but trust in leadership and leaders trust in AI, all that put together, what is the factor of trust that comes in?
A very good question, Brigadier. So, if I look at the army and compare it with a business, so in army, what happens is, and it's not just Indian army. If you take, like for example, SEALs, who are considered to be one of the most well-trained in the entire world, and there are many of these, like you have the Israeli force and so many other countries. So in army, generally what happens is the leaders, they earn trust first before they give the command. So they have earned that trust, and that is where they get elevated, and people who are below them, they will give their lives for the word, whatever command that is given. But unfortunately in business, it's the other way around, right? So many of the leaders, they don't have trust, but they want to give command to people, and they want them to take or follow them. So from that perspective, I would say trust is one of the most important thing. And for example, again, it's not like all the leaders in the industry don't do that, right? So there are leaders where I know, like I know many leaders in my organization, wherever I worked previously. If they tell something, everyone will just do it. They will not question them, not because they are fearful of them, but they trust them so much that they will take care of it. So okay, take care of them, whatever is the scenario. So today, that is unfortunate part, right? So many the leaders, they don't develop the trust first before giving the command, or before making their teams do certain things. So if they are able to establish that trust at the beginning, where the team members, even at the lowest level, they know that if there is a challenge, they can go and talk to the leader. They will be listening to their feedback. Because today, again, there is a lot of this preconceived notion that Gen Zs don't understand things, they don't follow things and all those things. But you have to also look at from their perspective. They bring a fresh perspective. They have been hired from some of the best colleges in India or world. And then what happens is they have to go with that old hierarchical thing, right, where someone tells and then everyone follows. So that doesn't work in business, right? So you have hired some of the best talent because you want to get their point of views and ideas about things which are working well and things which are not working well. So I have seen many leaders who are very open. Like for example, I had a leader, every day we used to go, all of us, like entire team of 20-25 people, we used to all go together on for lunch. We used to have the lunch together, and in lunch we will not talk about business, we will talk about a lot of other things, right? So that's these are some small things where, or for example, I know leaders who used to take their team members, just they will sit with them on a tea break or a coffee break, talk to them not about the business but about their family, how they are doing, how what are the any challenges that they are facing. So that is the kind of empathy and trust, and then that doesn't come overnight, right? It has to be built over a period of time. So I have seen leaders who can build that trust first, where people will be willing to do anything for them. And then obviously there are other leaders who will be like more dictatorial in their approach, where before even building the trust, they will start giving commands and they expect that everyone will follow. And that is where a lot of this dissonance in the organization starts, right? So it starts impacting the culture. And unfortunately, some of these leaders get elevated because they are able to get things done. But what is really happening to the morale of the team, they don't understand those things, right? And some point in time, it
I
will come
say,
and
I
hit
say
them.
at what cost?
What cost?
Correct.
I say at what cost are they
What
getting things
cost
done?
are they getting done?
True. So these are certain aspects where I would say building trust first before getting into the implementation mode, or before asking people to do certain things is something which I feel not only for because in army it becomes it's a practice over a period of time. They would have seen the leaders and they would have seen the leaders doing a lot of things for them and their other commanders. But in many businesses we don't see that. So, but I have also seen
Anand,
like leaders who
Anand,
do that work.
let me come let me come here and tell you that when you're talking about in the corporate, people have not seen leaders for long. It could be a short term relationship, and you think in the army is different. Let me tell you, we all know what happened in Mumbai in 2008 when the terrorist attack happened. The commanding officer of the NSG was there only 3 months ago. He had taken over command. He did not know even one third of his command, which were there to carry out that operation. And what happened? That he trusted them, they trusted him, and everything worked on trust. Even because the system creates a trust. And let me bring forward here one point about leadership, about trust organizationally, and not only about individuals. And I always knew trust. I have lived with it. I've breathed trust. I've lived trust. I've seen trust. But Simon Sinek put it so beautifully, and it gave me such clarity on what trust really is. And there's a very good video of his. Anyone who wants to see, just go to your browser and say Simon Sinek, trust over performance. And what he said was that if you have a what do you call a graph on which you have performance on the x-axis and trust on the y-axis, sorry, other way around, whatever, one axis, then he says the low performance, low trust, nobody wants. The high performance, high trust, everyone wants. But the difference is that the army prefers low performance or medium performance to come again. The army prefers high trust and low performance or medium performance to high performance. That is why we in the army, in our selection process, we look more for trust than performance. Performance and potential is not as much of a consideration as the trust is. And in the corporate, there is no way of measuring any parameter on trust. You'll have 100 parameters to measure performance, but there's no way that you can measure trust. And that is one of the biggest challenges, that in the corporate, people don't know how to create trust. And some HR people have started to like use a term where they say hire for will and train for skill. Because skill you can train, will is very difficult to build up.
Absolutely. And I've seen many instances like that, right? So generally what we have seen is people coming from say tier 2, tier 3 cities or tier 2, tier 3 colleges do much better than people coming from the tier 1 organizations or from tier 1 institutes, because they the tier 2, tier 3 guys come with more of open mind. They are more willing to learn. They know that they are not the best, but they don't look at it from that perspective, right? So they keep on working on themselves, and then over a period of time what we see is the people who come from generally the tier 1 institutes, they have their own attitude. They say that, hey, I know everything. So that kind of things, right? Yeah, so I can definitely correlate with what you're telling.
Yeah. So, Anand, coming to the closing part, if you had to leave every leader listening today with one shift that they must make immediately, what would that be?
So one thing, if you really ask me, is that they have to reinvent themselves, right? So because the day you stop reinventing yourself, I'm not telling reinvention from a business perspective, I'm telling as a person. Because the day you stop reinventing yourself, learning in terms of what's happening in the world, how do you handle those kind of new situations? Because that will only come when you are tuned to what is happening around you, right? So I would say the reinvention of leaders, so that they remain relevant, doesn't matter, because today it's AI, tomorrow there will be something new, then day after tomorrow something new will come. So, but companies and leaders who always have reinvented themselves, who listen to what is happening in the market, who listen to what their customers are facing, what kind of challenges they are facing, they listen to the people on the ground, because people on the ground, they know more than actually many of the leaders at the top, because they are interacting with the clients on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes the gems of the information are available within your team itself. But problem is, many leaders who are at a very high position, they don't go down, right? So they will say, I will have a town hall, but honestly no one opens up in a town hall, because in most of the cases what I have seen is there are like specific questions which are already asked before the meeting happens. So there is no one-on-one soul kind of conversation, soulful, right? I'm really listening. And sometimes leaders feel that I need to have answers to all the questions that people are asking. That's not necessary. You have to be open. There are many questions that no one, even the best of the best leaders, they may not have answers to all the questions. It's open. It's better to be open and acknowledge that, rather than many leaders feel that if I don't answer, people will look at me in a different way. In fact, I would say people who are more authentic, people who are listening, and you need not answer them immediately. You can always come back and say that, hey, these were 3 4 questions which I could not answer. I and my team have looked at this, and then this is how I can look at, right? So this is something I will feel that the reinvention, continuous reinvention of leaders is something which will always ensure that the technology will never overcome or overpower them.
Absolutely. I think reinventing yourself and being adaptable, embracing uncertainty, and living with the current trends is something that a leader cannot do without.
Sure.
So, Anand, thank you very much. When we started this conversation, we talked of one word, clarity. And you have brought that very clearly. We have understood that. And as we close, we also become very clear that leadership is not under threat, it is under exposure. AI is not replacing leaders, it is removing everything that the leaders used to hide behind.
Correct.
What remains is judgment, courage, vision, risk taking, decision making. They are what leaders have to worry about, and they have to learn how to master operating in uncertainty.
Correct.
And the most important thing is the ability to ask right questions, which you brought out very well. And that is
Thank
where
you.
true leadership begins. So thank you, Anand. That was not just insightful, it was necessary. And for everyone
Thank
who's
you.
joined here today, I want to tell you that we started with episode 1 on clarity. We followed on to AI, and next we are moving on to influence. You remember John C. Maxwell said, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So that's going to be our next number 3 episode, happening on the 10th of May, same Wednesday, 10th May, same time, 5 p.m. on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So that is what we will do. Please come prepared to take part. We love having more questions. We love having interactions. So please do write down your comments on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching. And if today's conversation made you think, then don't keep it to yourself. Share at least one insight one discovery, one spark that came to your mind and ignited your mind. Tell us something in the conversation that should continue even after this. And many of you, many of those who could not come and join us today, the recordings will be available and they can also comment so that we learn from each other, because the whole idea of this podcast is mutual learning. So, thank you very much. And yeah, so when you share some insights, tag someone that you think would have loved to hear all this. And most importantly, start asking the right questions. Thank you. Jai Hind. I can still, sorry, I can still take some time for questions. Are there any more
Are there
questions
any
before
more
we close?
questions before we close?
Okay, let me see if there are any
Let me
questions.
see if there are any questions.
No, I don't see questions.
No, I
I
don't
only
see
see
questions. I
statements.
only see statements.
So Ram Prasad has
So
nicely
Ram
summed
Prasad
it
has
up.
nicely summed it up.
Clarity, trust, and
Clarity,
inventing
trust, and
oneself with time.
inventing oneself with time.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay,
Jai
so
Hind.
thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Brigadier. Jai Hind.